Hello class. Welcome to my presentation on the importance of teacher immediacy in college classrooms. My name is Paul Andrew. Immediacy is the degree of perceived physical or psychological closeness between two people. This is a concept that was first postulated by social psychologist Albert Mehrabian back in 1969 that expresses the general terms the extent to which communication behaviors can enrich closeness between two people, also utilizing nonverbal interaction. He would go on to state later on in his immediacy principle that people are drawn towards persons and things they like, evaluate highly, and prefer. They avoid or move away from things they dislike, evaluate negatively, or do not prefer. This presentation will look at three main points. First, we'll look at verbal and nonverbal immediacy and see exactly what that looks like. Second, we'll see the advantageous connections to other learning concepts that immediacy provides. And third, we'll look at the downside to being an immediate teacher. First, we'll start with verbal immediacy. Verbal immediacy is about the words that we say and use in our classrooms and how they can either draw people closer towards us or they can actually push them away. When we use our words to be verbally immediate, what we are trying to accomplish is showing an openness to our students. We also should be looking to form friendships with our students with our words. And lastly, we need to show empathy as we interact with those who are in our classrooms. This will allow us to build these relationships and show this closeness and this bond with our students. Ways that we can do this is to use pronouns that are inclusive, pronouns such as we or us. One surefire way to use verbal immediacy in your classroom is to send verbal messages to your students that encourage the students to communicate back with you. You can do this very simply by calling your students by their first names. Or if that doesn't work for you, you can start by asking questions. The simple question of how was your day? How are you feeling? What's going on with you? Those questions will foster a dialogue that will promote a sense of closeness between an instructor and his students. Nonverbal immediacy is about your behaviors that bring the instructor and the students closer together in terms of perceived distance. These behaviors communicate feelings, and they are abbreviated forms of approach and avoidance behavior. Essentially, what nonverbal immediacy is it's not about what you say, but it's about what you do. So nonverbal immediacy behaviors include instructor appearance. So for example, today I have a shirt and tie on. I'm trying to convey to my audience that I'm a credible source and I know what it is that I'm speaking of. If I came to class with a Bermuda shorts on and maybe a Hawaiian shirt, I might not be considered as credible. Also, if I wore a suit jacket, I might be considered stuffy and unrelatable. So you have to bear in mind how your attire can convey messages to your students. Also, gestures. People speak with their hands when they get excited and they want to drive home a point and make an impact to their students. So you can use those behaviors to convey those messages as well. Facial behaviors. A lot of times you don't have to say a word and you can express what it is you're feeling. So if I'm disgusted and angry, my students might see that on my face, even if I never say the words. Or maybe I'm tired and just look real lethargic. They can see that as well. Along with your facial behavior, your eye behavior, if you're not willing to make eye contact with the student, that could be detrimental and a bad thing. You want to keep your eyes fixed and focused on what it is that who it is you're talking to and what it is you're discussing. A really fun one, and I say this because I have a video to show you, is vocal behavior. This will explain it for you.
1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone?
So, as you can see, if a person speaks with a monotone voice, it doesn't really help to foster an immediacy within the classroom. Some other nonverbal immediate behaviors that we see in the classroom include use of space, inappropriate use of touch, environment, scent, and also an appropriate use of time. So immediacy also offers advantageous connections to other learning concepts. Concepts of effective learning, cognitive learning, motivation, participation, and student compliance. There's a slew of research done by some of the more prominent names in this area of study. People like Anderson, Gorman, Kelly, Richmond, Makrowski. All these researchers have put forth this information, and even in one particular article that was written by Richmond and Company, it says that teachers with low immediacy will generate lower cognitive and effective learning. Teachers with moderate immediacy will generate high cognitive learning and moderate effective learning. Teachers with high immediacy will generate similar to moderately immediate teachers' cognitive learning, but higher effective learning. And so as you look up the research, and it seems to all agree with one another, that if you use these immediate behaviors in your classroom, that they will have a positive effect on your students that will increase their effective as well as their cognitive learning. We see also with studies through Christoffel that immediacy can affect motivation, can help students to become more motivated to want to learn either for themselves or for other personal goals that they have. It also fosters participation, and this was in a study by Rocca back in 2007 and also supported by work of Cohen in 1991. And lastly, Kearney and Burroughs both believed and have found in their work that immediacy helps to foster student compliance within the classroom. There are unfortunately disadvantages to using immediate behavior in the classroom. Not all immediate behaviors work well for every teacher. For example, one of the behaviors that we saw earlier was the appropriate use of touch. As a male teacher in this day and age, there's no way in the world that I would appropriately or otherwise touch a female student. You may be perceived as weak by your students, the pushover teacher, the one that you can have your way with and get over on. And the idea here is not that you are a weak teacher because you're immediate, but it does mean that you seek to foster the closeness with your students. And while we're on the topic of perception, your fellow teachers or your coworkers, your colleagues, may also view you in an inappropriate light, that they may perceive that you have less control over your classroom. So as I wrap up this video here, teacher immediacy encourages cognitive and effective learning. Immediacy also fosters an increase in student motivation and participation. These are two key things to help to facilitate learning in your classroom. You know, a lot of times we think our goal is just to transfer the information, but if you have a student that's motivated to learn, it becomes easier to transfer the information. If your students are participating in class, it helps them to learn better. And lastly, this concept of immediacy helps us as teachers to gain the students' compliance, as they see you as someone who's credible, as they see you as someone that they trust, as they see you as someone who they have a rapport with, and there's a closeness there. There's a good chance that they will become more compliant with your request, and thus making it easier to facilitate learning within a classroom. My conclusion is, by creating the perception of physical or psychological closeness, essentially using immediacy in your classroom, with these students, teachers are able to achieve the goal of creating a learning environment for their students where they can have an opportunity to reach their own educational goals. Again, my name is Paul Landry. Thank you for your time. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation on the importance of teacher immediacy in the college classroom.